Welcome to Hurdle the Line Extra. I am Fletch, and I will be talking to 32 passionate UK-based NFL fans about their team's 2024 off-season, the 2025 off-season so far, and who they think will don their team's cap and hoist their team's jersey on stage with Roger Goodell on the 24th of April in Green Bay, Wisconsin at the NFL Draft. We'll have some hot takes, some cold takes, maybe even some bold takes, definitely some elite ball knowledge. And today we're going to be talking all things Minnesota Vikings with the one and only Andy Thorp. Andy, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you, Fletch. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. It's just traipsing through the off season as we always try to do. Um, so just as a little introduction to yourself, how did you get in? How did you become a Vikings fan?
Yeah, I think for me it was sort of, I guess I've always sort of loosely was into NFL when I was younger. I think sort of when you're at school, sort of mid-30s now, not too many people are. It's sort of a small sort of cohort of us who followed it. So I actually started by going to the UK games. So I
All right.
went to the first few UK games. One of my mates actually was a Vikings fan, and I think it was the first time the Vikings came over and played the Steelers. I think that was probably what turned it for me. I think just an afternoon of watching Adrian Peterson run riot was more than enough to do the job. I've sort of been
Yeah.
been stuck with sort of years of pain since then.
I mean, that'll do it, but you can't have many better introductions to a team than someone like one of the best running backs to ever do it.
Yeah, honestly, it was awesome. I think it was one of those things. I think early on, like you end up just watching the games, watching the Super Bowl. You don't really know what's going on. I think that was one of the first UK games, which was actually like had a bit behind it, sort of thing.
Yeah,
They were all a bit like quite shit up until that point. I think
yeah,
it took a few to really get going, but yeah, absolutely loved it, and sort of haven't really looked back from there.
yeah. Perfect. I mean, so let's get started on the actual 22. You mentioned pain. Not too much pain this year, maybe a little bit, but not too much pain this year. You've had a fantastic year, at least from an outsider's perspective. 15-2 is not much to shake a stick at, but from your perspective, how do you think the season went?
I think it's one of those. I think when you look back, if at the start of the season someone had offered you 15-2, I think you'd
Oh,
have
sorry,
laughed.
14-3 even. Not
14-3, sorry, yeah, 14-3. I think you'd have really. I think the expectations going into last year, sort of off the back of Cousins leaving, I think with Darnold coming in, and obviously Darnold's past was obviously what it was. I think the expectations were very much Darnold was going to run out the first 4 or 5 weeks, probably get to the bye after London, and then we'll see JJ McCarthy come in and sort of see sort of how good he is.
yeah,
And I think obviously McCarthy's injury just I guess derailed everything, but at the same side, it really obviously everything opened up for Darnold, and I think it was so unexpected that just as every week went on, you started just to believe a bit more. And I think
yeah.
it wasn't really until the end when really it was just I think the last sort of 2 games for Darnold, obviously against the Lions in the last regular season game, and then against the Rams were just it was such a shame that I mean they're the only 2 teams that beat us all season. Everyone
Yeah.
else we played, obviously, it was. Yeah, it's one of those. It was so unexpected. I think at the start of the year we were sort of expecting 5 or 6 wins, maybe with Darnold, with McCarthy, and I guess the expectation. I think since Kevin O'Connell and Quasey have come in, have been it's a competitive rebuild. We're not expecting to be one of the worst 5 or 6 teams, but yeah, okay. I don't think last year. I think last year's maybe what we'd hoped this year was going to be. So I
Yeah.
think what it's done is really sort of expectations for this year. I think JJ McCarthy is on his shoulders now. I think everything's set up to go. We look really good, sort of both sides of the ball. I don't think I'm struggling to think of any rookie quarterbacks that have probably ever come into such a good situation.
Yeah.
I think I mean, you look at, not to compare him, you look at what Mahomes inherited in Kansas coming into Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, a solid
Yeah.
run game. Look at what Caleb Williams came into in terms of weapons. Like, okay, Bears didn't have the best season, and I think he had a bit of a tough start, but was a good situation. I just think what he's coming into, having Addison, Jefferson,
Yeah.
He's got solid run game that's been added to Hawkinson. There's just if it, I mean, we're going to find out if he's a good quarterback or not, probably in the first 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I can't speak highly enough of JJ McCarthy. I watched that young man win my college football team a national championship. I can't speak highly enough of him. And unfortunately, it's so sad to see him go where he's gone now as well, which it's a bit heartbreaking, I'm not gonna lie. But you're absolutely right. I think that to walk into a situation like that, I mean, your defense is fantastic. It's phenomenal. Uh,
I mean, what Flores has done in a few years is,
yeah,
I mean, O'Connell's first year, it was the Ed Donatel defense just absolutely died on his ass. It's the nicest way to put it. Got to the playoffs, and I mean, we got picked apart by Daniel Jones, and
yeah,
that's how bad it was. I think a few years ago, I think whether it's like 13-4, 12-5, it was such a false representation of how the season was. There's so many one-score games. I know there's a fair few last year, but the defensive side of the ball was just horrible. I think Flores
yeah,
has come in and it's an ugly defense now. And I think it did taper off a bit towards the end of last season. But I mean, this year we've got, I mean, Dallas Turner was quite a high draft
yeah,
pick. We'd be excited to see if he gets a bit more of a run. I mean, I think we've obviously lost Cam Bynum, which is
yeah.
a shame, but I think he's been equally. I think we've replaced these guys, and we've got people to step in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say so. You've got all that going for you. And look, I'm not gonna mince my words here. Justin Jefferson is my favorite non-line in the whole league. I think he's
Phenomenal.
just watching the receiver documentary and just see like. Don't get me wrong. Before that, his talent speaks purely on itself, on its own. He's absolutely phenomenal. But just seeing what a kind of person he is and just what a lovely person he is. Just you can't help but root for people like Justin Jefferson and just want him to do well because he makes the game fun. He's
And
enjoyable to watch.
it's yeah, just I mean, it's really I mean, obviously coming off. Yeah, just there's no you struggle for words like every week he just does something and you're like,
Yeah,
wow, like nothing's out of the realms of possibility with him. What's It's just great.
yeah, and like I say, going back to the start of the season, you go on the 5-0 run, you hit the bye, and then you unfortunately hit a Detroit Lions team that very, very, very close game at US Bank Stadium, 31-29. Unfortunately, then you go and take a second loss in a row to the Rams in a game that controversial call right at the end maybe didn't change the overall result of the game, but still that incredibly controversial call with the face mask on Sam Darnold. Um, do, do you think that 2 game stretch where you were 1 game above the Lions and ended up 1 game behind, and then the Lions go on the run that we do, you go on the run that you do, and you're just constantly just behind all the time? Is that
Yeah, I think it's one of them. Even after losing to sort of Lions and Rams in back-to-back weeks, it felt like okay, we're sort of we're still above where we feel like we should be. So I
yeah,
think at that point, I think we went to 5-2.
yes,
I think so. We obviously, and it was literally in the space of like 4 days. You've gone from 5-0 to 5-2, and it felt a little bit almost like yeah, not taking a step back, but you probably felt sort of indicative of what you thought we were going to be that season.
yeah,
And I think then it's sort of turned around as sort of a very friendly run of games where I think we had like the Colts, the Titans, and the Jags sort of in back-to-back games, and
yeah,
some of them, the Jags game in particular, was just so ugly, and it was like, well, we're going through, we're still. So I've always thought it's the sign of a good team is a team that can play poorly and win.
yeah,
Like you look at the Chiefs throughout most of last year, the first 6-7 weeks, they were scraping through. And again, it's not to compare Vikings to the Chiefs. I don't think they're anywhere near that yet. But you look at good teams, they find a way to win.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, it was one of those things like it was almost like 1 week you were waiting for if if offensively you weren't going to win the game, it was going to be the defense that gets you out of trouble. If the defense was just hemorrhaging points, I think the Titans games again, like there was, I think it must have been like the third quarter, like Will Levis turning into like prime Tom Brady, like that alongside like our cornerbacks just going AWOL.
Yeah.
But you always just felt like someone somewhere was, it never felt in doubt.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sort of feeling you've not had in a while. Lots of them have been, well, especially I think with Cousins under center, it's like he's either going to be take us on a game winning drive, or it's going to be an ugly pick, an ugly
Yeah.
sack.
Uh,
So
I think that's where the credit goes to obviously Sam Darnold, but also to the coach like Kevin O'Connell, who ended up being coach of the year, where it's so easy in those situations. And if you maybe had JJ McCarthy, those situations look slightly different. Because, like, I completely agree. The best teams are the ones that find different ways to win on a consistent basis. And you look at that Colts game, like you say, the third quarter, things start to go wrong. Maybe a rookie quarterback doesn't know how to steady that ship and then get the offense moving and
yeah,
driving a bit better. Whereas a Sam Darnold, then you've got Kevin O'Connell and the coaching staff who are able to just go, right, listen, calm
I mean, you
down.
just, I mean, I know there's everything like O'Connell being a quarterback whisperer and everything, but I mean, just look at the guys he's just elevated and look where, I mean, we just looking at where they've come from. Like Cousins was like your typical, he is, you just like your Derek Carr, your solid
Yeah,
Mr. 500. Like you might make the playoffs one year, you might miss out the next. You're not going to win 15 games, but you're not going to lose. You're not going to lose.
no,
You're not going to win only three or four. And then even when he got injured, like Josh Dobbs came in off the back of a week, like in a week, and was just
yeah,
2 3 weeks, and it was that almost, I think, in a way, almost sort of hampered us in terms of like the draft pick and everything else the following year. But at the time, it was brilliant. But even towards the end of the season, like Nick Mullins, who is your probably your bang average backup, I think it was against the Lions,
yeah,
like put up something ridiculous, like 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and
yeah,
again, I know it was an end of season, a bit of a crazy game, and but at the same time as doing that, he's turned the ball over 4 or 5 times as well.
yeah,
But he's just found a way to elevate everyone. I think when you look at Darnold, and again, I think just sort of alludes to what he said earlier about just the situation players end up in. Look at what he had when he was in New York. Look at what he had in Carolina. For rookies, they were horrible situations to walk into. He went into Carolina as a bridge. Again, a horrible situation to walk into. He's come to Minnesota where everything around him is set up for success. Well, the ideal was obviously set up for JJ McCarthy. So
yeah,
I think Vikings fans are right to feel excited about next year because I I mean, yeah, if Kevin O'Connell's drafting a quarterback because he sees something in him, I think you've got to trust his judgment at this stage.
yeah,
And I know we've had very limited. I mean, I think maybe like a handful of snaps in pre-season, but from what we've seen, like the guy's got he's got an arm on him. He's managed to pick out. He's thrown a few touchdowns. Looks
yeah,
good. Looks composed. And I just think everything from my side, everything you've seen off the pitch, like last year, everything. I mean, obviously, see all the Vikings bits online. Everything we've seen from the off season this year, like he looks like the kind of guy you want to be the face of your franchise for years to come.
yeah,
So you just hope that next year there is going to be ups and downs. Like
yeah,
even look at Jaden Daniels this year, great year, but he had weeks where I mean the first 2 weeks I didn't think the guy was going to make it through the end of the season.
yeah,
The way he was running, I was amazed he didn't like finish week 3 or 4 in a body bag.
yeah,
Like he's just getting nailed week in week out, and it's but he adapted, changed his
yeah,
game, but equally had some very rough days as well.
yeah.
And we're fully expecting some ugly days. But as long as I think the good's got to outweigh the bad, and I sort of firmly believe it will.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you go on that other run, you leave the Rams game 5-2, like you mentioned. You got the Colts, the Jags, the Titans back to back to back. Then you get the Bears, which goes to overtime. But you end a stretch up until the last game of the season where you've gone from 5-0 to 5-2. Things may be looking to go awry a little bit. You're then 14-2 going into that week, and in that as well, by the way, you win the Kirk Cousins Bowl quite comfortably.
That
And
was, I mean, I think Atlanta did their best to help us out there. Their their defensive backs the whole game were just, I mean, again, it's just Jefferson was phenomenal and Addison turned up as well. And I think, yeah, Atlanta, I think, were just made to look. very silly at times.
Yeah, looking at Kirk Cousins and saying, "Listen, we're why you were good in Minnesota, and not you. We were." Um, but then like I say you get to you beat Green Bay in week 17, 14-2. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. It's important and pertinent to the season. The smirk is personal, but the rest of the question isn't. You go into Ford Field, last game of the season, not just for the division, but for the number one seed overall. That's unprecedented type things that you would never have thought if you'd have asked yourself 5 years ago that you and the Lions would be playing for the number one seed in the NFL in the final week of the season and for the division. You'd have thought you were crazy.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and it was one of those going into the game. It's sort of you. There's like obviously there's I know Lions going into that game had an awful lot of injuries as well,
Yeah,
and those things I know like you look at every team who's sort of made a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl. Things have to go your way during the season. Whether it's the
yeah,
Chiefs having, I know Chiefs have had a few questionable calls go your way, a few dodgy interceptions, whatever it may be, you've got to have something go your way, whether it's a late field goal doinking, anything there. And you feel like during the whole season we had all of these things, and it felt almost like I don't know whether where Detroit had so many injuries on the sort of defensively,
yeah,
whether we thought maybe it was just going to be a game where we go in and it's like, well, Detroit are going to score against our defense, but we're going to score more than you just because. But I think it's just one of those games. It's just I think it was almost like all of your bad luck almost came at once, and it was sort of
yeah,
it was always going, regardless of like it's a sort of NFC North matchup is going to be tough. There's no gimmies in the NFL at all,
yeah,
but it was always going to be a tough matchup anyway. But I maybe didn't expect the scoreline
yeah.
to be one sided, but even just during the game, it wasn't really until the third quarter the game got away. But
No,
there was so many opportunities up until then to sort of we were own. Well, I think Darnold was his own worst enemy, and it was almost like Darnold slipped back into sort of New York, Carolina Darnold, and sort of almost played within himself. And then when we needed to make something happen, just instead of maybe a more methodical build up, just sort of turned into full gunslinger and just killed us. And I think
yeah,
ultimately, I think this is why those two games are probably back to back games are probably why he wasn't offered another contract, which
yeah,
I think, yeah,
yeah. Well, like you say, the game was 10-6 at halftime,
yeah,
and then ends up 31-9, and it's just like you say, second half just kind of
just ran away.
ran away. Um, with that being said, though, I'm not going to press you too much on that one specific game. It's fine, we can move on. Obviously, then it goes into the playoffs, and it's one and done in the playoffs, which has to be given the season and given the fact that you played Rams earlier in the year. It was a game that you probably felt like could have gone a lot better, could have gone your way, and then
Just such an anticlimax. I think going even like the last few games, even against Detroit, I know against Detroit, against Green Bay, sorry, we got the win, but looked a bit leggy. There was almost part of me, if we were playing a full strength Detroit team, was do you see? I think the Rams the week before were obviously sort of done in the playoffs. Nothing was going to change. They were able to sit all their starters. They looked fresher. They looked more on it. I think we'd obviously come off the back of the Detroit game, which, like you said, I think the first half was a physical sort of slugfest. I think just the season took its toll in the end. I think
yeah,
he went into the Rams game, and even the week of the Rams game, there was the disruption, move to Arizona, something where you think actually that's probably playing into our favour a bit. But I think the Rams almost it felt like they came in a bit better prepared. I think they had an answer for everything. Were really able to sort of shut JJ down, and
yeah,
I think we just didn't have an answer. I mean, like again, a team with excellent receivers, good run game. They just picked us apart, and our O line, which I think had been probably let off quite lightly through the majority of the season. I think when you look at sort of how we got through, I mean, we went without Darasaur from about week 4 or 5. And I mean, the guy's an absolute beast, just in terms of one, protection, and two, just really being a real enabler in the run game.
Yeah.
And I think obviously we had like Cam Robinson at left tackle and just Ed Ingram, both really, it just wasn't there. I think just Jared Verse just absolutely, well, he spent the whole game chasing Sam Darnold around, and I think
Yeah.
Darnold, we just had no answer to sort of their D line at all.
No, and that was a fact. They have a phenomenal young D line as well, so that's only going to continue to be menacing for the
Yeah, they
league. Um, but yeah, the game being changed, you were traveling anyway. That makes no very little difference to you. You're
yeah,
traveling to the southwest of the country. That's happening anyway. It's got to make more. But I think you've got it's an entirely fair point though, and it doesn't help when your bye week is in week 6 that
no,
you are playing then. I'm going to try and do counting real quick. You go through,
about 8 games, I think, 8, 9
yeah,
games.
8, 9 games just back to back to back to back. That's 12 games. 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12 in the regular season,
Yeah,
13 games back to back to back to back to back. That's not easy to contend with.
honestly, it's
Um,
the same sort of same for everyone. Though everyone only gets a week off. Like the teams
yeah,
who have, I guess, the teams who have the buys later in the season, maybe it's slightly more beneficial.
yeah.
But
Um, with that in mind as well, just so far we're in the 2025 off season. We've passed the crazy period of trades and free agency. How do you feel the Vikings have fared so far?
I think it's been brilliant. I won't lie. I think we've filled so many holes. I think obviously mentioned the O line, and obviously we've brought in. I think the two guys from Colts. We've obviously got Will Fries, the guard,
Yeah,
and the centre,
Ryan
who's
Kelly.
yeah, that's the one. Um, Name eluded me there, but I think that's going to sort of shore up the O line a little bit. We'll have Darasaur back as well. I think obviously defensive line, bringing in Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, good bits of work
Yes.
there. I'm really excited about Jordan Mason. I think we came up against him in I think his week 2, week 3 against San Francisco, and
Yeah.
the guy's like of all the running backs we faced last year, and there were some good ones on the schedule, sort of Brees Hall, Kyron Williams. He was probably the one who he did some serious damage. Like the guy runs and he runs hard,
Yeah.
and I think with Aaron Jones, obviously, I think he took a lot of the load last year. I think Cam Akers sort of stepped in as and when. I think maybe more was expected from Ty Chandler at the start of the year. But Aaron Jones, he's not getting any younger. He took a lot of the workload on. So I think we'll see a bit more of like a 50-50 split there, but bringing in someone who you're almost not, you've got two RB1s, I think, now, which I think when you look at teams like look what Detroit do with Montgomery and Gibbs, I
Yeah.
think when you've got that sort of 1-2 punch and you can take the load off without losing sort of productivity. I think is going to be massive. I think bringing back Byron Murphy as well. He was excellent last year. I think we were only ever going to bring back sort of one of him or Cam Bynum, and I think Murphy's
Yeah.
probably the guy to do there. A few, obviously, like Isaiah Rogers, another cornerback. I think that's somewhere where we might end up addressing in the draft. A sort of yeah, how that goes, and I think yeah, Rondell Moore as well, potentially going to be the wide receiver 3 guy. A
Yeah.
nice bit of business. I know he's obviously been around a bit. Arizona, I think again he's one we played a couple of years ago. I think for Arizona he had a bit of a day against us, but a capable wide receiver 3, and I think that's going to be important with. Unfortunately, I think Addison's going to have an impending ban for his activities last pre-season. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think all in all, though, there's no complaints. I think it feels almost arrogant to say, but we're going into the draft without any glaringly obvious needs.
No. No,
which
I would agree.
I think's a good position to be because I think we can sort of, I mean, how we address that. I don't know. We've only got 4 picks as well, so it's
Yeah.
probably better that we're in that position, not necessarily needing. We don't need to go and find ourselves like a cornerback. We don't need to find a wide receiver one. So it'd be
No.
interesting to see how they play it.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of those is a compensatory selection as well, and the other two are ones you've received through
Yeah,
trades. So it's only one of those is originally your pick,
yeah.
which is you've also signed Jeff Okuda, a name that's familiar to those of us in the NFC North.
Yeah,
Very glad to see the back of him and to see him go somewhere in the NFC
I think
North.
I think it's one of those. I think one thing I think Kwesi's done since he's come in is he's not scared to like take a bit of a fly on
Yeah,
a former high pick, and I think, I mean, ultimately the guy's going to be playing for a contract. I think he's on. I think we've signed him for like sort of the vet minimum. I think he's like
yeah,
£1.2 million a year. So
yeah.
look, if they can get Flores as well, I think if anyone's going to get any ounce of anything out of him or find him a role, it'll be Flores.
Yeah, and the only other question I think I have in terms of the Vikings free agency and what's gone on so far, obviously JJ McCarthy is the guy. You've got Brett Rippon, I believe, is the backup
Yeah.
quarterback on the roster at the moment. Sam Darnold has gone to the Seahawks. We all wondered whether he was going to come back. Would he have a season of starting, go 50, go 14-3, and then go, okay, I'll be the backup. Most of us, I think, knew that was probably not going to happen, especially someone would take a fly on him. Um, Nick Mullins out the door. He's gone to
Jacksonville, I think.
Jags. Yes, that's
Yeah.
it. He's gone to the Jags. So that's you've got two potential backups gone out. Brett Rippon, do you see him being the appropriate backup? Would you like to see someone come in? And the kind of follow up to this one is the ghost of Aaron Rodgers in the NFC North lives on to screw us all one more time. In through no fault of the Vikings' own, probably through Brett Favre and the legacy of Brett Favre, everyone thought that Rodgers was going to go to the Jets and then go to the Vikings. And you got linked with Rodgers for a little while. Do you think there was anything serious in that, even if it was just a conversation of going, would you come in and be a backup for JJ? And also, basically, what's the next step? Do you get a better vet backup or what?
Yeah, I think I mean the whole Roger stuff, you could almost see it coming a mile off, right? As soon as Darnold's gone in, I mean, look, if you look around at the opportunities that were there for him, New York, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, I think the Vikings would probably be the one. Look, he's not, again, somebody's not getting any younger. Maybe he had thoughts of a Tom Brady Bucks kind of season where he could come in, have that 1 year with everything around him, everything in place. But I mean, one thing I think is, again, with O'Connell and Kwesi, just the culture's so right. Everyone seems to want to be there, want to play there. You look last year how everyone was getting behind Darnold, and I just think Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys. He's obviously, look, the guy's had a great career. Like, he's been a pain in Vikings fans' ass for as long as he's been in the league.
Yeah,
Same for, I'm sure, for Detroit. You've obviously been on the wrong end of some stuffings from him as well.
yeah,
But I just can't see the fit. I think, and as a fan base as well, we've spent so long saying, get rid of Cousins, get rid of Cousins. We want someone younger. We want the rookie contract. And I think the injury for McCarthy last year was unfortunate.
yeah,
If there was going to be any doubt over McCarthy for this year, I think they'd have stuck with Darnold
yeah,
because they knew what they had in the house, in the building, and probably would be a guy who would understand that when McCarthy comes back, could take a step back to be QB2. I just can't imagine Aaron Rodgers signing and being happy with being a backup. I think the thought of it is fun when you play it out in your head potentially,
yeah,
but I think the reality of it is just I'd rather stay well away, and I think it almost opens up that window for JJ McCarthy to have next year to really get his feet under the table, just start getting a feel of what the NFL is,
yeah,
ready really for sort of 2026 to be right. Well, this is your time. Like, you've had a year, There's no surprises anymore. You're fit, you understand it. We've built a team around you. Like, go and show us what you've got, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just in terms of a backup, I think, I mean, looking at the options out there at the moment, it's obviously limited. I think it looks like they're going to, it looks like they're going to sort of, look like they're going to wait until after the draft. I think it'll start affecting comp picks for next year. But I think Flacco's probably the one I've seen touted about a bit more. I think, I mean, whoever, if you're playing your QB2, if it's for 2 or 3 games, that's fine. If someone can step in and win one of the two or win two of the three, that's amazing. The reality is, if they have, there's a reason they're a backup quarterback. If they're in for 5, 6, 7, 8 games, your season's probably going to be done. I wonder if, yeah, I think Flacco's probably going to be probably a sensible option as well. I think
Yeah.
an older head for JJ McCarthy to turn to. I think he's probably again a guy who's seen it all and won't mind being in the back seat. Or yeah, I'm sure after the draft there's going to be someone somewhere is going to get cut or dropped. I mean,
Yeah.
even looking in New York, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Winston was probably the one who I thought at the start would be quite fun, especially with Addison and Jefferson. I think could have been as a backup, probably someone who could probably keep your season alive, maybe. But yeah, I think Flacco is probably going to be would
Yeah.
be the guy. I don't think Rippon's going to be anywhere near it.
Yeah. Apologies by the way, because I think I've kind of lost track of where I'm at. I'm gonna give the one positive, one negative.
From last season.
Yeah, one specific positive, one specific negative.
Um, I think the positive was just I feel like for the Vikings we're a year or two ahead of where maybe we thought we might be. I
Yeah,
think turning up and winning 15 games is very difficult to find negatives. And I think, well, I mean, the big negative I think last year was sort of O line and the run game. I think Aaron Jones came in and did such a good job, but the poor bloke's been run into the ground
yeah,
without really a lot. He's put a lot of miles on the clock really for no sort of purpose. So, and I think they're
yeah,
both things which you've actually addressed, obviously in the off season.
yeah. Awesome. And if you could give an overall grade, A to F, pluses, minuses, both welcome, what would you give the season?
I mean, it's a solid A minus. Like we've been expected to win. I mean, the season, like the regular season itself, A plus. The playoffs, just straight F. It was awful.
Yeah,
But I mean, you take a step back now, a few months down the line, and I think you look back and think, wow, that was actually it was something like to go 15 or 14-3, sorry, in the regular season is any team who does that, you're going to struggle to look for flaws, even more so when they say at the start of the season. I think the over under was sort of 6 or 7 wins.
yeah,
So to absolutely sort of really blow all expectations out the water, and that again, that's a season done last year without Hawkinson for half of it, without Darisaw for half of it. So I
yeah,
think it's like they're two big players who we're going to have from day one this season, which will be massive.
yeah. So sorry, I'd lost train of thought when going through some of the questions, and you'd led me into next
No
question
worries.
so well. Which is why you're a great person to chat to on things like this. But looking at the FC, and you've mentioned that there are no glaringly obvious holes. If you could pick one position of need, one area that you do think maybe needs a little bit more strengthening than others, what would you say it would be?
Do you know what? I mean, cornerback is you can never have enough good corners. I think that's where we're going to go. I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Yeah,
I also, if we come away with a wide receiver, I wouldn't be disappointed at all.
no,
I think
no,
there's a good chance that maybe one or two might fall down the board. Again, running back, I wouldn't be too upset if we come away with the running back knowing that really Rogers and Mason are potentially on 1 year contracts. Um,
yeah,
or sorry, Jones. All that Rogers talks killed us off. Jones and Mason on 1 year contracts. I think Aaron Jones will be gone by the end of next year. So three running backs isn't ever going to be a bad thing, given how often they obviously get banged up.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it's going to be. I think corner will be the position, but receiver would be the exciting pick, right? I think it's
yeah,
giving JJ McCarthy another option and a real sort of wide receiver three, someone who can come in and probably make an instant impact. And I think that would sort of fully. I mean, we've given him the O line, we've given him three receivers, a tight end, and a run game. Like, there's the
yeah,
keys. Go and make it happen. I think would
yeah,
be the way to go.
yeah, absolutely. Now, is there anyone you're particularly looking at for the Vikings right now at 24? And with you being at 24 in the position that you're in, would you be okay with trading back a little bit, getting some more capital
Do,
with only having four picks, or
do you know what I would be? I think obviously how strong the class is, we don't know. I mean, again, even if we looked to like defensive tackle guard, they're not necessarily people you're going to be drafting 24. And there's a couple of defensive tackles who might fall down. I wouldn't be against it. I think you might find a team wanting to trade up for. I heard something interesting the other day. It was someone like trading up for like Jackson Dart or something to be able to take him in the first round to have the 5 year
yeah,
contract. I think there's going to be people who will trade up, and I think given where we are with capital, actually trading back in a couple of extra picks, sort of, I'd rather a couple of picks in sort of the top 40 than the one at 24
yeah.
to really do it.
No, that's entirely fair. Entirely fair. I say, is there anyone specific that you've got your eye on who's just like, listen, if he falls,
I mean, the dream is I don't think in a few of the early mocks you're seeing things like Genty fall into like the late teens, and you're sort of like, if that guy falls, like go up and get him. But now
yeah,
we're looking. Obviously, we've now signed Mason. I think Genty's going to go in the top 10. I mean, possibly like if a receiver, I've seen a couple recently. I know Packers are picking before us, and they've drafted his name Abuka
yeah, Ibuka,
and Luther
out of
Luther
Ohio State.
and Luther Burden.
Yeah,
Both of those seem to be falling in that range.
yeah,
Hampton, the running back, if he drops that far, I think Harrison, the cornerback as well, could be a guy who's probably sort of around the 24 mark. I
yeah,
think there's just lots. I think there's lots of options given the range and obviously the amount of picks we've got. I think if we trade back, I think Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon as well, is an option probably around 27. I think it's one of those. It's going to depend a lot on what other teams obviously do, and if the board looks stacked at 24 and you can sort of get away with trading back, do so.
yeah,
If not, then I think you just look best player available and go from there. And whether that's a receiver, I think receiver would be the one I think it'd be good for McCarthy.
yeah. Now my idea is to try and get the position of need that you give. We've got a couple here that are available to us. So because this year we've got a Travis Hunter in the draft. Now, I'm not saying he's gonna fall to 24 before anyone starts thinking I've gone crazy. Um, but given that Travis Hunter is just an incredible two-way player, I'll let you have both corner and wide receiver. If you could take any corner in wide receiver as a draft prospect and have them from a rookie and a wide receiver in return as well, who would you take?
I think wide receiver is an easy one. Could you imagine Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson in the same team?
That'd be illegal. I
That
think
would be that'd be big, right?
I think I think some states would legislate against that team turning up, to be quite honest with you there, my friend. Um, but at corner, who would you take?
I mean, you could go. There's so many options. I mean, top of the head, Deion Sanders would be
Excellent choice.
that'd be an option. I mean, I know we had Patrick Peterson. I mean, has been more towards the end of his career, but a young Patrick Peterson would have also been good fun.
Yeah, yeah. Sweet. Well, both excellent choices, obviously. If people are so enamored by yourself, which they should be when watching this, and they would love nothing more than to connect with you in the future, how can they do so? Where can they find you?
I think the best place is probably Instagram. Is just Andy Thorp 5.
Nice and easy. And in that same breath, down in the description of this episode, the link to Andy's Instagram will be there. And because it's such a long, arduous, and horrible off season, we invite you all to join us in our Discord server as well. I need to keep reminding people of that. I forgot in the last when we did in the last couple of videos I've done with people. I need to remind myself to keep doing it. Join our Discord server, where, 'cause like I say, it's a long, arduous, horrible off season. And we're a group of people who get together. We're going to talk football. We can talk the draft. We can talk college. We can talk NFL. We can talk UFL. Now that's back as well. Come talk F1, football, rugby, anything, life. Send memes. Memes are the thing that I want. That's all I care about is memes. Send those. Link also in the description of the episode and all over our socials. So please do. And it remains me to thank one more time Andy Thorpe for coming on and representing the Vikings so elegantly and so fantastically. Appreciate it, my friend, and have a fantastic rest of your off season and good luck next
Cheers,
season,
bud.
but not too much luck next season.
Cheers, Fletch. Thank you, mate.